Okay, good afternoon again, everyone. Anna, Jonathan, and Rezi. Um, Probably we can start and let's just see kung meron pa mga daragdag. Pero I would like to begin by asking you how was the problem set? Any violent reactions about it? Oh, don't worry, safe space naman to. So I would like to see your opinion or your take on it para if ever, ma-adjust ko naman yung susunod na problem set because if you think it's too lengthy or it's too difficult, I can make adjustments. But if you won't tell me that thing, then I'll just assume that that's okay and I'll do probably around the same level or I'll make a problem set of around the same level after I think unit number 3, yun yung susunod nating problem set. But of course, I'll also take or I'll also look at the performance of the class as a whole para makita ko kung kailangan ko mag-adjust. All right. Pero in the absence of any inputs from you guys, then I don't think you have the right to complain come the second problem set. All right. So ito na yung panahon. Sabihan niyo ako how do you think about it. All right. Or kung nahiya kayong ayan, meron na. Tricky, aha. All right, yeah. I agree, Jonathan. Medyo tricky nga siya. Especially yung, actually, I think you're referring to the true or false part. That's why I quite understand why just a few people answer the true or false part. Okay. Yes, and then you can now see the answer to the problem problem 1.5 in true or false. So you can log in into Canvas and then take a look at your answer to 1.5. Tapos naka-display na supposedly doon yung correct answers. Of course, alam niyo na yung correct answer. It's just true or false. Pero yung explanation ko kung bakit true siya or bakit false. So you can take a look at it and see if you agree with my statements there. And just let me know kung nagkamali ako ng reasoning. So maybe I can recheck it. But that's what I think about those problems. All right. So hopefully makikita niyo siya. Have anybody checked the problem set? I think I made the answers visible to everyone yesterday. Hindi, kaninang madaling araw, mga 12:05 or 12:07 a.m. So hopefully makikita niyo na siya. Nilagyan ko siya ng explanation kung bakit. And I'm still thinking kung gagawin ko pa uli ito sa susunod because this is the first time I put a true or false in my problem sets. Magaan siya for me kasi nabawasan yung chechekan ko. But yeah, I agree. It's a bit tricky. And then it appears that most of the questions I mean, meron kasi sa Canvas, ang maganda sa kanya, kaya item analysis siya. So it's checking if a certain question can differentiate those who are doing well and for those who did not so well in that particular quiz or in that particular part of the problem set. And it appears that all of the questions have discrimination index more than 0.5. So that means um, for problem, siguro merong at least 10% na nagkakamali sa isang particular question. That's why I agree that it's a bit tricky. Okay, but hopefully my explanations make sense. My only request is that you guys view or download or print the answer key for problem set 1.5 for your own consumption muna. Do not upload it somewhere or in public. The only reason is baka meron pa kayong mga classmates na hindi nakakagawa ng problem set. I got some requests. They do have valid excuses. So kaya huwag niyo muna siyang i-share. Pero pwede niyo siyang i-download, i-print niyo pero for your own personal consumption na lang muna. Do not post it muna online for the benefit of those who haven't taken the problem set yet because if I discover that it was already leaked online, ang gagawin ko, papalitan ko yung questions and baka yung classmates niyo nakapagsimula ng gumawa nung sa true or false, then that will invalidate their work. Gagawin na naman nila uli yung bagong questions na gagawin ko. Okay? So that's our only deal. I'm not so very, so yeah, speaking of which, I'm not so very madamot. Paano ko ba sabihin nang hindi magsa-sound konyo? I don't think we do have the monopoly. I don't think we have the monopoly of knowledge. All right. So that's why all of the recordings that I make it publicly available. That's why I upload it in YouTube. because I believe pwede nating i-share yan. Creative Commons naman natin yan. So pwede natin yang i-share. Also, yung mga work text na personally kong sinulat, mga modules na ako talaga yung sumusulat, you're free to download it, keep it for yourself. Or kung ako yung talagang author, I give you the authority to share it with your younger org mates na magwa 155 or whatever course I taught in the future. Share them our links. That's fine with me. Pero I cannot speak for everybody. Like in Math 155, this is lecture notes written by Dr. Hatulan, and I just borrowed it and made some improvements from it. So I cannot allow you to share it. Pero other than that, everything that I personally write, like the problem sets, um, the recordings, you're free to share it with anybody. So that's fine with me. Okay. Yun nga lang, lagyan nyo ng disclaimer na yung teacher nyo doon ay maraming mga typos. Alright? At minsan may mga maling nasasabi. So itatama nyo na lang sila. So yun lang yung request ko. Alright. And then, instead of a meme for today, I want to share with you guys this quote. This is one of my favorite quotes. The first time I heard it is in 24, my favorite, one of my favorite TV series. It's the one with Kiefer Sutherland. Of course, except yung huling season na wala na si Kiefer, it's not that good in my opinion. Pero there was an instance there when their president is speaking and she said na in any democracy, the people gets the leader they deserve. All right, and I think it's more apt to us more than ever because we are at the crossroad of another presidential election, and I hope we will now elect competent leaders kasi medyo I was a bit triggered no mga news recently wherein you have these public officials giving out money, all right, and they're doing it in broad daylight, and by doing it that way they think it's fine and that they can get away with it. And unfortunately it seems that the system is broken, that they will really get away with it. And part of the blame, not only to the politicians themselves, but also to the electorate, because we are not doing our part in the checks and balances. In a democracy, you do have checks and balances. There's always a certain portion of that society that will check the others. So kung may abuse yung politicians, it's only the electorates that can hold them accountable if the justice system cannot. So ang mangyayari, if we keep on electing these leaders, they will think that what they're doing is fine, mapapropagate o mapaperpetuate yung ganung mga practices. So I hope the new generation, kayo or tayo, kung magkakasama pa ba tayo sa generation, I would like to think yes. So let's start the change. All right. So I have doubts that will happen in this election, but hopefully in our generation we can make it happen. I would not like us to repeat the words of national scientist Dioscoro L. Umali, kung saan pinangalan yung DL Umali Auditorium natin sa UPLB. In one of the commencement day speeches he gave, he apologized to the graduating class and he said, I quote, sana tama yung quote, pero parang ganito yung sense ng sinabi niya. He said na, be the heroes we were never were and live. So that means he is admitting that this generation failed the then current generation by making blunders not only on the political side but also in safeguarding the natural resources of the country. So ayoko maulit na sasabihin natin sa mga anak natin or sa mga susunod na generation na sorry pero sana kayo yung maging heroes na hindi naging tayo. So let's not slip this or let's not make this opportunity slip to make the Philippines a better country. Okay? Yun. Pagpasensya nyo na yung konting rant and konting patalastas. Every once in a while, we need to vent. All right? Lalo na ngayon, supposedly, makakausap ko yung mga office mates ko, makapag-usap kami about the depressing politics that we have, pero work from home tayo halos lahat. So, let's make the most out of our platform. Okay? So that being said, I hope you keep that in mind. So back to regular programming. Last time we were talking about algebraic limit theorems, wherein tiningnan natin yung mga properties ng mga convergent sequences. Specifically, if you have two convergent sequences, what happens if we perform algebraic operations on the terms of this sequence? What will happen to the limit, right? So we have seen that addition, multiplication, and multiplication by a constant preserves the convergence of the sequence. And not just that, it was preserved in a very nice way, such that the limit of a sum is the sum of the limits. The limit of the products is is the product of the limits. And if you have a scalar multiplier or a constant multiplier to the terms of your sequence, then the brand new sequence will converge to the original limit times the same constancy you multiplied. All right. So ganun din yung nangyayari kapag ka quotient with the provision that the denominators should not be zero in any case. Okay. Now, I think tumigil tayo sa pagpo-prove ng part B. I was supposed to prove part A and part B last time, but I think we only finished part A. So let's try to see the proof of part B. Now, what is part B? Part B is claiming na kapag nagbuo tayo ng isa pang panibagong sequence, nang laman niya ay product ng corresponding terms ng dalawang sequences, then the resulting sequence will be convergent. And furthermore, that will converge to the product of the limits of the two original sequences. So ang only caveat here, yung pag-multiply mo yung corresponding members. So the first entry in A or the first term in A must be multiplied to the first term in B, second entry times second entry, and so on. Okay? Then that sequence will converge to the product. Okay? So let's see the proof. And the proof is very ingenious. Okay, may ginamit siyang isang trick. Okay. So alam natin na yung sequence ng AN from assumption ay convergent. So ang assumption nito, convergent yung dalawang sequence, yung AN at saka yung BN. Now we know that AN is bounded, AN is convergent, and we have already seen that any convergent sequence is necessarily bounded. So, definition ng pagiging bounded, kasi convergent, siya ay naging bounded. Pero dahil bounded siya, may nag-exist na positive real number, say capital M1, such that M1 is larger than or equal to AN for all N. Okay? For all little n coming from the set of natural numbers. Alam natin yan. Tapos, si B ay isang constant. Ano nga ba si B? Siya yung limit ng mga BNs. So, pwede akong makukuha ano bang pwede kong gamitin? Probably I can use a variety of the Archimedean Principle that will tell me that kung meron akong absolute value ni B, lagi akong may makikitang M2 na mas malaki sa kanya. Alright? Actually, madali lang pala. Hindi ko kailangan ng Archimedean Principle. Pwede kong tingnan si M. I can take M2 to be absolute value of B plus, say, whatever positive number I want. Like, absolute value of B plus 0.5, that's basically greater than the absolute value of B. So this is obvious. And then if I take capital M to be the maximum between M1 and M2, then that capital M will be an upper bound for both AN and BN. Sorry, kailangan ko pala dito ay strict inequality. So dapat ito ay ginawa kong strictly greater than, tas ito ay strictly greater than then. Okay? Which is fine. Kasi kung nakakita ka ng M1 na greater than or equal to AN, kumuha ka ng isang number na strictly greater than that M1, then that will be greater than AN for all N. Okay. So basically what I established here is to get a bound, an upper bound, for both the absolute values of the terms in the sequence AN and at the same time, that is also a bound for the limit or for the absolute value of the limit B. Okay. Bakit ko siyang gawin? Kasi makikita nyo mamaya pagko-combinein ko yung information from the two limit statements into one para ma-prove talaga na magko-converge siya sa limit ng sa product ng limits. Because remember, what we're proving here is that the limit of the product converges to the product of the limits. So ibig sabihin, kailangan ko magkaroon ng absolute value ng AN, BN minus AB less than epsilon, right? So yan yung goal nating inequality na papakita later, all right? Our only assumption is that N1 that AN and B are both convergent. Okay? Now, bakit ko kailangan yung bounds? Marirealize niyo yan later. Pero let's manipulate everything and prepare all the ingredients for the main proof. All right? Now, in this theorem, our only assumption is that AN and BN are convergent. So we can just apply the definition for any epsilon greater than 0. First, for AN, we can find a starting index n sub 1 such that starting from it and moving forward, ang absolute value ng AN minus A ay mas maliit sa epsilon over 2 times m. Now, where did we get epsilon over 2m? Well, the exact expression will be for the sake of what is to follow, pero ang justification, bakit ko yan kayang gawin? Di ba, yung definition ay for all epsilon. So mag-work siya kahit ano pang positive number yung piliin ko. So, ibig sabihin, mag-hold din siya sa epsilon over 2m as long as I know that this is positive, right? But we said epsilon is positive. I-divide mo siya by a positive number 2m, then itong guy na to ay positive pa rin. So mag-a-apply pa rin sa kanya yung definition. We can find the starting index n sub 1 such that for all little n greater than or equal to n sub 1, this inequality is true. Okay? The same thing will happen for Bn. Kaya lang para kay Bn, iba yung starting index. Kahit same yung distance na gusto natin between the terms of the sequence and the actual limit, parehas epsilon over 2m, posibleng iba yung starting index para kay Bn para yung mga terms ay magsimulang maging malapit kay B. That's why I need to use a different starting index for Bn. Okay? But ultimately, we can show na this inequality will still be true. Okay. Now, ito yung paglalaruan natin. Itong dalawang inequalities na to, yung gusto kong mapaglaruan para makuha itong inequality na to. But first things first, I want to guarantee that these two inequalities will work. All right? Bakit kailangan ko yung i-guarantee? Kasi yung unang inequality, this will happen sa mga little n na mas malaki kay n1. The second inequality will only happen for little n's that are greater than or equal to n2. Now, I want them to be true at the same time. So I will define capital N to be at least the larger between N1 and N2. All right? Or may isa sa inyo na nag-suggest last time na i-take ko na lang yung capital N to be N1 plus N2, and that's also a good idea. But the bottom line is the minimum that I need for capital N is that it is the larger between N1 and N2. Para pagka si capital N ay mas malaki sa parehas na si N1 at si N2, etong dalawang conditions na to ay mangyayari at the same time. Okay? And that's why here, dapat nag-insert ako ng dami palang kulang dun sa proof, ano? Lagyan ko lang siya ng red highlight para alam ko na idudugsong ko to sa next version ng handout. So now, we can take capital N to be the maximum between N1, comma, N2, all right? Then for all little n greater than or equal to capital N, dahil si capital N ay yung mas malaki kaysa kay N1 at si N2, kapag si little n ay mas malaki kay capital N, so these two inequalities will be true. Now the problem is, how can I take advantage of these two inequalities to get this desired inequality? Right? Ito yung gusto ko kasing makuha, right? Para sa definition ng limit ng sequence. Okay. So mag-start ako sa left side. Lagi naman ganun, one side. Just manipulate one side if you want to prove or to derive an inequality. All right. So I'll start with that more complicated side. And I want to break this down, usual trick, into a sum, kasi yun yung madali. Triangle inequality lamang, magiging less than or equal to yung inequality. So I think that's the way to go. But I need to force the issue that I'll be able to use this to expressions. So in other words, I want to express this absolute value in terms of a larger quantity that will involve these two absolute values that we know upper bounds for. Okay? Ito yung trick. Usual trick to sa analysis proofs or inequality proofs. nag-add and subtract ka ng something. So you are adding something to the expression na ang net effect ay 0. In this particular case, you will notice that, okay, ito yung given, kinopya lang siya. Ito yung given, kinopya lang siya doon. Pero ito, nag-add and subtract ako nung middle two terms here. It didn't affect the expression. That's why equality pa rin yan. Okay? Pero bakit ko napili na gawin yon? Well, I chose to do that because I can group the first two terms. Okay? Tapos makikita ko, dun sa first two terms, parehas silang may an. So pwede ako mag-factor out ng a sub n or ng absolute value ng a sub n. So I got that guy, and look at what's left. I have the absolute value of bn minus b, which is a good thing for us because we know a bound for this guy. All right? By definition and limit, alam ko siya ay less than epsilon over 2m. Okay? Now, I'll also do the same thing for the last two terms in this absolute value. I-group ko sila. Ang common naman sa kanila ay si b. So I can factor out an absolute value of b and be left with the absolute value of an minus a, which we already know a bound for. Okay? Now, but keeping that aside, magkakaroon pa tayo ng konting problema. Paano si an at paano si b rito? Which will remind you, ito pala yung prepare natin kanina na ingredient. Kumuha ako ng upper bound para kay absolute value ni an at saka ni b. We assume or we have proven the existence of a capital M such that it is larger than both an and bn or their absolute values. Okay? Now, pinili ko yon. So, ibig sabihin, si an, pwede kong palitan ng isang mas malaking number. Si bn, papalitan ko ng mas malaking number. And the resulting number will be larger than what we had before. So, kaya nakuha itong line na yan. Tapos, dito na lalabas yung dahilan kung bakit epsilon over 2m yung pinili kong gamitan ng definition ng limit kanina. I could have chosen any positive real number, right? Para dun sa epsilon, dun sa definition ng limit. But I specifically chose epsilon over 2m. Why? Because I anticipated that magkakaroon ako dyan ng factor na m. Alright? Magkakaroon ako ng factor na m. So, ibig sabihin, dapat mawala yung factor na m. Kasi yung gusto nating inequality, epsilon lang yung right-hand side. So, kailangan ko ng over 2m, over m, dun sa epsilon na pipiliin ko para makancel yung additional factor m that was brought about by the factorization of these two expressions on the two terms or on the two groups. Okay? Tapos ipag-add ko pa pala sila in the end. So that means hindi to pwedeng epsilon lang, hindi to pwedeng epsilon lang because if that's the case, then I'm gonna get 2 epsilon. But I want exactly epsilon, so nag-introduce ako ng over 2 sa kanilang dalawa. All right? Just to fix the issue that when I simplify this guy, I'll get epsilon. And then I can go back and see what I have done. So ano na nagawa natin? Well, we have shown that for any epsilon greater than 0 of your choosing, there will always exist a capital N, such that starting from capital N moving forward, this inequality is true, or the absolute value of an, bn minus ab is less than epsilon, which is precisely definition ng limit ng isang sequence applied to the limit applied to the sequence an, bn, and the limit ab. And that ends the proof. All right. Is that clear? Any clarification about that? Ito yung mga tipo ng mga proof na when you're a first-time analysis reader, okay? Parang magtataka ka, bakit of all possible epsilons yan yung pinili? Bakit pa merong over 2m? And parang magmumukha siyang super talino or super komplikado ng proof because of these expressions popping out of nowhere, right? But that's usually an analysis. And if you're doing analysis for a good number of years, and take note, a good number of years, saka papasok sa instinct mo itong mga bagay-bagay na to. So don't feel bad if you're reading the proof and you felt and you felt na hindi mo siya kakayanin, alright? Kasi bakit may mga epsilon over 2m na involved dyan? Hindi nyo makita kung bakit. Well, it's actually a skill that you can develop through time, and I mentioned years, to make all of these things seemingly natural for you. So what I want you guys to take from it ay yung mga little tools, katulad ng pag-add and subtract, paggamit ng triangle inequality. So these are the usual tools na kailangan nyo pag-prove ng limit statements, all right? And hopefully, as you go along your careers, this would be more natural. Okay? So any questions? Because if there are none, absorbing pa, yeah, that's fine. Let it simmer. But at least try to get the most out of out of the sync sessions, all right? Kung meron talagang tanong na hindi nyo kung meron talagang part na hindi nyo naintindihan, tanong nyo sa akin. Pero kung naintindihan nyo naman siya, you just need to glue them together. Yeah, that's fine. Let it simmer and then reflect on it later. And then when we go back next meeting, you can ask me some questions kung meron pa ring malabo. All right? But make sure if there's something bugging you, just ask them right away. Okay? Huwag nyo nang patagalin. All right. So yeah, you're welcome, Charles, always. Now, let's look at the next set of theorems. So parang ito yung sa axioms. Remember sa axioms natin ng real numbers, nagsimula tayo sa algebraic axioms, tapos meron tayong order axioms. So parang ganun din, in parallel natin din-develop naman yung sa specific subset ng R. Kasi you can think of sequences ay parang subset din siya ni R. It's just a more structured subset na meron siyang order, tapos tinitingnan natin yung behavior dun sa dulo nitong sequence na to. So titingnan din natin yung order limit theorems, which basically tells us what's the relationship between inequalities involving the terms in the sequence and the limits themselves. So if you look at theorem 2.4, its assumptions are you have a sequence AN that converges to A. Tas may isa ka pang sequence, mga BNs naman, nagko-converge kay P. So we start with two convergent sequences, all right? And let's deduce some properties with respect to inequalities. Property 1, kapag ka daw non-negative, lahat ng terms dun sa sequence, then the limit A must also be non-negative. Okay? Which kind of makes sense kasi kapag ka naglista ka ng mga positive numbers, do not expect to get a negative number in the tail end of your list. All right, that's what part A is telling us. Okay, pero medyo kailangan pala natin maging careful kasi posible na magsulat ka ng sequence sa mga positive numbers na magko-converge sa hindi positive. All right, remember 1 over n. The sequence 1 over n is comprised of positive real numbers. Pero ang limit niya ay 0, which is not positive. Right? So posible pala yon. Pero kapag lahat ng terms ng sequence ay non-negative, then this theorem guarantees that the limit is also non-negative. Okay? Part B. Sa part B naman, kapag yung mga corresponding terms ni Bn ay greater than or equal to dun sa corresponding terms kay An sa lahat ng n, then yung limit ni yung limit ng mga Bn's ay greater than or equal to sa limit ng mga An's. So pag hinilera mo sila, kinompare mo A1 versus B1, panalo si B1 or mas malaki si B1. A2 versus B2, mas malaki si B2 and so on. And you can do that for all natural numbers. Then we are sure that the limit of the Bn's is greater than or equal to the limit of the An's. Okay? And then the last statement is kapag ka naman lahat ng terms dun sa sequence does not exceed C, then does not exceed a constant C, then do not expect that the limit will exceed C. Kapag yung mga terms ng sequence ay bounded above by C, then dapat si C ay mas malaki or at least equal dun sa limit na A. Okay? Now, the proof is quite interesting because you have three statements here, but we can treat the two latter statements to be corollaries of the first statement. You'll see that most of the work will be done by proving A, and then we'll just be using that result in order to prove B. Tapos yung result kay B, siya yung gagamitin natin para ma-prove si C. Okay? So let's do the hard stuff first. Let's try to prove that if you have a sequence of non-negative terms, then we are sure that the limit is also non-negative. Okay? And we do so by contradiction. So proof by contradiction yung ginamit ni lecture notes. So, contradiction. So suppose hindi totoo yung gusto nating i-prove. Meron tayong convergent sequence of non-negative real numbers that converges to a negative number. So suppose the limit is negative. And we want to draw out a contradiction. Okay? Now, ang alam lang natin, convergent yung sequence. Dahil convergent yung sequence, ano pa bang pwede nating sabihin? But go back to the definition. Parang yun yung natural na gawin para sa atin kasi limited pa yung knowledge natin about sequences, right? So if you have a convergent statement, then we go back to the definition of the limit, all right? But the definition of the limit calls for an epsilon greater than 0, okay? So pwede mo siyang gamitin kahit ano pa yung epsilon greater than 0. So in order to draw out a contradiction, maybe we need to find a special epsilon, okay? Na magkakaroon ng contradiction. And what a better way to find that special epsilon than to take advantage of the supposition. Okay? Gusto natin ipakita, imposible yan. So sige, kunwari totoo yan, si A ay negative. So kung si A ay negative, yung negative A over 2 dapat ay positive. Alright? Dahil siya ay positive, pwede ko siyang piliin to be the epsilon na nandun sa definition ng limit ng sequence. So ibig sabihin, if I will take epsilon be equal to negative A over 2, then I can find a starting index capital N, such that starting from capital N moving forward, the distance of the terms in the sequence and A is smaller than negative A over 2. All right? So nothing fancy about that. In-apply lang yung definition and limit sa specific epsilon and negative A over 2. All right? Now, from elementary algebra, we learned that if we have an absolute value involved in a less than inequality, so we can write it as a continued inequality of the form. Tanggalin mo lang yung absolute value, kopyahin yung right-hand side. Tapos para dun sa pinaka-left, kunin mo lang yung negation ng nasa kanan. Ito ay negative A over 2. So nasa kanan niya ay A over 2. So this is the information that we have so far. Everything looks good pa. So let's dig deeper. Hahanap kasi tayo ng contradiction. Alright? Now, ano ang alam natin? Ang di ko pa nagagamit dun sa proof ay yung supposition na bawat AN ay non-negative. So basically, it's worth it to investigate what's the property of the ANs that we can deduce from our argument so far, right? Yung argument natin as it stands ay ito. Tapos kailangan ko makita, kailangan ko ng contradiction, di ko pa nagagamit yung assumption that involves A sub n. So probably I'll play with that. Well, A sub n is here, so I'll just isolate it in the middle of the inequality. And I can easily do that by adding A to all sides. Pag nag-add ako ng A sa lahat ng sides, sa kaliwa magkakaroon ako ng 3A over 2. Alright? Tapos sa kanan naman magkakaroon ako ng A over 2. So essentially here, what we have shown is that A sub n is less than A over 2. But I dare say there is a contradiction here already. Nasaan yung contradiction? Sige nga. Contradiction. Negative A over 2 at A over 2. Specifically, what about them, Charles? Sige, ang nagta-type si Charles. Or habang pinag-iisipan pa? Sige, 30 seconds. Being less than po sa AN. Yeah, si AN ay less than si AN for sure we have seen is less than A over 2. But I can see I can see a statement that AN is smaller than negative A over 2. See it? Well, the answer here is simple. Siguro nag-overthink kayo, ano? Ano ba yung A over 2? We have assumed that A is negative. Okay, great. That's right, Rezi. We assume that A is less than 0. Okay? Dahil si A ay less than 0, ibig sabihin si A over 2 ay negative. Right? So basically, we are saying that A sub n is less than 0, which contradicts our assumption. Okay? So ibig sabihin si A hindi pwedeng maging less than 0. Okay? Kasi magko-contradict yung assumption na ito. So therefore, we need to accept that the supposition A less than 0 is false. So we need to accept that A is greater than or equal to 0. Okay? So yun yung part A. Yung proof naman ng part B is simple. Okay? And we can take advantage ng result natin kay A. Alam na natin yung nangyayari kapag meron tayong sequence of non-negative terms. Right? But look at this. In part B, the assumption is that AN is less than or equal to BN. Mas malaki yung mga BN sa mga AN, at least kapag yung index ay equal sa isa't isa. But from here, I can say that BN minus AN is what? Is greater than or equal to 0. All right? From this inequality over here. Okay? And then I know that this sequence will converge. The sequence of the Bn minus Ans will converge by the algebraic theorems. Si Bn at saka si An parehas nagko-converge. So ibig sabihin yung sum nila ay magko-converge din. And the algebraic theorems last time told us na pag minusin mo lang din yung limits nila, yun na rin yung limit nito. So ibig sabihin si Bn minus An will converge to B minus A. All right? By our limit theorems. And then we know that each term in this new sequence are all non-negative. So by part A, the limit must be greater than or equal to 0. In this case, that means B minus A is greater than or equal to 0. Pero a little manipulation will reveal that will require B to be greater than or equal to A, which is essentially the claim dun sa pangalawang case. And so that's the idea behind the two-line proof you see over here. All right? Medyo pinahaba ko lang yung explanation, but that's the idea. Okay? Tapos, maganda rin yung pagpo-prove ng part C. Masaya kasi madali. Bakit siya madali? Kasi tingnan nyo naman to. A sub n less than or equal to C. Compare natin dun sa result na na-prove na natin. Isa lang yung pinagkaiba nila. Ito ay less than sa terms ng sequence. Ito ay less than sa isang constant. Alright? Yun lang essentially yung pinagkaiba niya. Pero a nice trick is, okay, buuin ko yung sequence na Bn na equal sa puro C. Okay? Which is fine. And I know that this sequence, being comprised of the same terms, ay magko-converge yan kay C. So I have Bn, which converges to C, and then I'm sure by assumption that An is less than or equal to Bn, kasi equal naman lahat ng mga Bn kay C, tapos by assumption An is less than or equal to C, so this is true. But this is essentially what the previous part of the theorem told us, na kapag ka ito ay totoo, then merong similar relationship or less than relationship yung kanilang mga limits. So from part B of the theorem, we'll have A less than or equal to the limit ng Bn's as n approaches infinity. Pero yung mga BN, sabi natin, madaling pakita na nag-converge lang yan kay C. Right? Constant sequences converge to the constant number in the sequence, right? So essentially, finally, we have shown that A is less than or equal to C. Then satisfying feeling, draw the block box. Okay. Now that's the basic order theorems for limits of sequences. All right. Parang ang dami na kagad nangyari, no? Pero dalawang pages pa lang yata tayo. All right. So 30 seconds para i-absorb itong mga pinagagawa natin. So guys, keep hydrated. Sobrang init na ngayon. Right. Tapos parang hindi pa nakakatulong itong ginagawa natin. Nag-aaral tayo ng real analysis sa ganitong oras. Pero we don't have any choice. Okay. Now, I would like to jump to one special theorem. Ito yung isa sa mga gamit na theorem, especially if you want to get the limit of a very complicated sequence. All right? And actually, it's not just that. Probably yan yung nakita natin sa kanya nung elementary calculus natin, right? Pero sa advanced cal, etong squeeze theorem, makikita rin natin yung theoretical implications niya or yung theoretical significance niya. Kasi hindi lang siya pang-compute. Nagagamit din natin to establish several other results in analysis, okay? Pero ano ba yung sinasabi ng squeeze theorem? Okay? Now, makita nyo kung bakit squeeze yung tawag sa kanya. And then the weird thing is when I taught in the US, all right, discuss akong ganyan. So class, this is the squeeze theorem, blah 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 blah, and all I saw were blank faces. All right, parang hindi nila malaman kung ano yung or nag-isip sila ano yung squeeze theorem, ano yung pinagsasabi nitong teacher kung ito ano. For some reason, ang tawag nila sa squeeze theorem ay pinching theorem. Though I also look at other books, kahit US-based yung book, squeeze theorem din yung ginagamit nila. Even Leitold is using a squeeze theorem, right? So it's kind of a generic name or a conventional name for this theorem. Pero I don't know why they are more familiar with the name pinching theorem. Okay? Pero in any case, ano yung sinasabi niya? Kapag meron kang tatlong sequences, AN, BN, and CN, such that si CN ay nai-squeeze sa pagitan ni AN at ni BN. Bakit na-squeeze? Makita natin later, right? Or yung ibang tawag sa squeeze theorem ay sandwich theorem. Yeah. Kasi si CN ay nasa sandwich ng dalawang sequence, AN and BN. So if for every N, totoo tong inequality na to, ibig sabihin CN lies between AN and BN, and it so happened that ANs and BNs, or the sequences AN and BN are both convergent, and they converge to exactly the same number, then CN will be forced to converge to the same limit L. Kaya nga parang nai-squeeze siya. So, kumbaga sa real valued functions, ito si AN, or ayan yung representation ni AN, ito yung representation ni BN, ni CN, tapos si representation as a function ni CN ay yung nasa gitna, and this will happen for all N. Pero in the long run, kapag wala na pala akong pupuntahan long run, kapag naging equal yung limit ni AN at saka ni BN, walang choice si CN kundi mag-converge doon sa parehas na limit. Kasi nga nai-squeeze siya. Ano bang Tagalog sa nai-squeeze? Naiipit siya sa pagitan ni AN and BN. So once mag-meet si AN and BN, and since A and BN were assumed to be convergent, at infinity, magtatagpo si AN at saka si B in the limit, all right? And CN being in the middle of them, mapipersa rin siyang maki-ride na dun sa limit na L. Yun yung sinasabi ng Squeeze Theorem. Okay? Now, let's try to prove the Squeeze Theorem. Okay? Now, the nice thing about the proof of the Squeeze Theorem is that it won't be too difficult kasi walang fancy tricks na kailangan dito. We'll just need to make use of our assumptions. Una, ito. Pangalawa, ito. Pangatlo, ito. Alright? Tapos papakita natin ang limit ng Cn ay equal kay L. But how will we be able to show that the limit of the Cn or the limit of the sequence of Cn's will be equal to L? Well, babalik ka na naman dun sa definition ng limit. Dapat mapakita mo na kahit anong epsilon greater than 0, merong starting index such that moving forward, ang absolute value ng Cn minus L ay magiging less than epsilon. Ayan yung WTS natin, right? Ito yung gusto kong ma-establish. Okay. And what I'll do is to work with the assumptions that were handed out to us. We're told that the limit of AN and BN are both equal to L. So let's apply the definition to those two guys or to those two sequences, all right? So magbigay ako ng isang arbitrary epsilon greater than 0. Meron akong starting index N1 such that starting from N1 moving forward, A sub N minus L is less than epsilon. Okay? And again, you can expand this inequality as negative epsilon less than AN minus L less than epsilon. All right? And then since ang kailangan kong maabot ay inequality na may Cn, pero paano ako makakarating sa inequality na may Cn? Dapat magkaroon akong inequality na may An lamang. So that's why I know na possibly here, I want An to be isolated in the middle. So I'm going to add L to all sides of the inequality. So I'll have these two guys over here. So yeah, L minus epsilon less than An less than L plus epsilon. Okay? And then I will choose one of these two inequalities, all right? Kasi end naman yan. So pwede akong simplification. So Math 101 is waving again. Gamitin natin yung concept sa kanila. Ang ibig sabihin to, this inequality is true and this inequality is true. Dahil ang connective ay and, pwede akong mag-simplification. All right? Now, how do I want to simplify this compound proposition? Well, pag pinili ko tong una, magkakaproblema ako dyan. Kasi ito yung inequality na alam ko. Hindi ko masisingit dyan yung less than L plus epsilon somewhere because I don't know which is larger, L plus epsilon or C sub n. So that will spell trouble. So I'm praying that that will not go there, all right? Na hindi naaabot sa ganung punto. Mas madaling gamitin yung kabila. Yung L minus epsilon being less than AN. Because L minus epsilon being less than AN will allow us to conveniently put another part in the inequality dun sa assumption natin. So pwede ko siyang idugsong dun sa kaliwa. Okay? And now I know, all right, L minus epsilon then is less than C sub n. Okay? Tapos I'll do a similar thing para kay n. Apply mo yung definition, may nag-declare ng epsilon, magbibigay ako ng starting index n2 such that this condition is true. All right? And then I'll expand this inequality again and play with the quantities. I will find that Bn is actually mapapalitan lang dito yung letter. Okay. Oops, sorry. Pero ang pipiliin ko naman sa simplification dito ay yung L plus epsilon because I cannot use L minus epsilon in the assumption here kasi dito siya mapapa-insert somewhere either before Cn or after Cn. I'm not sure. Because I don't know which is smaller, Cn or L minus epsilon. But there will be no question that L plus epsilon can be written at the end of discontinued inequality. Kasi nga si Bn, sure tayo ay less than L plus epsilon, so kaya ko siyang ilagay dyan. Okay? But before I can formally write this long inequality here, I need to make sure that these two inequalities are true. Because remember, they are not true for all natural numbers. They are just true for certain natural numbers. For instance, this inequality is only true starting from n1 papunta sa dulo ng natural numbers or as we go along indefinitely in the set of natural numbers. The second inequality is only true starting from N2 moving forward. Okay? So meron tayong maliit na problema ron. But I want them to happen simultaneously so that I can formally write this in my proof. And that is easy. I can just take capital N to be the larger between N1 and N2. Pag kinuha ko yung mas malaki sa kanilang dalawa, okay, ibig sabihin, sa lahat ng little n na mas malaki sa kanilang dalawa, mag-hold itong dalawang inequalities na ito. Okay? So I'll take what we have from the assumption, part 2 ng assumption, tapos idagdag ko to. AN is larger than L minus epsilon. BN is smaller than L plus epsilon. So I have that. So I can just say na in summary, we have L minus epsilon less than Cn less than L plus epsilon. Okay. And this can be translated back into a continued, into an absolute value inequality. I'll just need to subtract L from all sides. I'll get this. And by definition, this is this guy. Okay? And then you're happy that we have reached yung WTS natin kanina. Bakit? Eto na yung nakita na, yung nabuo natin. We have shown that for any epsilon greater than 0, there exists a capital N such that for all little n greater than or equal to capital N, the absolute value of Cn minus L is less than epsilon. Okay? So therefore, we can say, yeah, the limit of Cn is equal to L. Tapos end of proof na natin yun. All right? Is that okay? So this one is more of a play on the inequalities. So I guess this is more straightforward than the previous proofs that we have. Okay. Now, the utility of the squeeze theorem is not so much on the proof because it's, again, straightforward. Dun siya sa kanyang mga implications. Una, sa Math 36, natutunan natin paano yung gamitin, at least sa case ng real valued function, para ma-evaluate yung limit ng mga komplikadong functions, right? Especially if it is easier to find two different sequences that will converge to the same number and that will sandwich the complicated sequence than analyzing the sequence head-on. Okay? Parang katulad nitong sa equation 2.3. Hanapin daw natin yung limit ng sequence na to. It kind of looks scary at first, all right? Pero madali nating masusolusyonan yan. Una, pansinin nyo, may cosine factor. Pero alam natin ang cosine ay hindi naman lumalampas ng -1 at 1. Whatever is inside the cosine. Kung ano man yung argument ni cosine, walang duda. Pag kinuha mo yung cosine, ilagay mo si kahit anong number sa loob ng cosine, ang sagot laging between -1 and 1 lamang. So this long expression here is nothing more or can be reduced into this inequality, right? We're sure of that. Tapos ang problema na lang natin yung 2 to the minus n. But let's start with a more known fact or an easier thing to fact check. All right. So yung 2 to the n is greater than n. When n is equal to 1, this is 2 greater than 1. That's fine. When n is equal to 2, you get 4 greater than 2. N equals 3. It will still be true, and I think you can prove it via induction. Pero this is one fact that is actually I think is clear. So whenever you have those in your proofs for problem sets or homeworks, you can just say clearly 2 to the n is greater than n because by observation, it's easy to deduce that fact, all right? Unless tingnan ko kayo ng detalyadong explanation kung bakit, all right? And since this is true, I can divide both sides by 2 to the power n times n, and I will get this inequality, okay? I want this more than this simple inequality here kasi may 2 to the minus n dun sa given expression. Okay? Now remember, sa squeeze theorem, kailangan ko makahanap ng dalawang convergent sequences na nagko-converge sa parehas na number. So, medyo dalawa yung kailangan nating i-check. Yung dalawang sequences na gusto mong buuin, dapat silang dalawa, sinasandwich nila yung given sequence. And not just that, para in the long run matuloy yung pagsasandwich, right? Dapat parehas ng limit yung nasa kaliwa at yung nasa kanan. Okay. Now let's first establish ano yung dalawang sequences na i-consider ko. Well, from the cosine statement, yung cosine ng something, hindi ko nakakopyahin, pero yan yung mahaba dun sa taas, yung n cubed minus n squared plus n minus 13. Alam ko yan ay less than or equal kay negative 1 at saka kay 1. Baliktad. Positive saka negative. Contradiction kagad, no? Hindi ko naman kailangan ng contradiction. And then what I'll do is to multiply both sides by 2 to the negative n. So multiply ako ng 2 to the negative n, multiply ako ng 2 to the negative n, multiply ako ng 2 to the negative n. And then we know that 2 to the negative n is less than 1 over n. So this guy is less than 1 over n. Tapos pag nag-multiply ka rito ng negative both sides, remember, ma-flip yung inequality. Right? So here we see that negative 1 over n is larger than negative 2 to the negative n. So ito ay may negative 1 over n dyan. So now we have a sequence, yung original sequence natin is sandwiched by the two sequences. First, the sequence of 1 over n, of negative 1 over n's, and the other one is the sequence ng mga 1 over n. But fortunately, this will go to 0 as n grows without bounds. Ito rin, magko-converge din yan kay 0. So na-sandwich natin yung original sequence by two sequences that both converge to 0. So therefore, that forces the middle sequence to converge to 0 as well, right? So the limit of this sequence is equal to 0. Okay? So it seems easy, pero it's not always the case, right? As usual, parang buhay lang yan, no? So mahirap kasi kailangan mo nang humanap ng dalawang sequence na nagsasandwich. Kasi yung dalawang sequences na nagsasandwich na yun dapat parehas convergent at hindi lamang yun. Dapat parehas sila ng limit. Okay? So as I've mentioned, we will not focus much on using the Squeeze Theorem for computing limits of sequences. Probably in a homework, I'll try to ask you to use it to do that. Actually, my initial intent was to give this to you as your homework. I used the Squeeze Theorem to prove that the limit of n to the 1 over n ay equal k1. Pero for some reasons, kanina umaga, inisip ko yung proof na to. Parang hindi ko maisip yung AN at saka BN. Alright? So kaya sabi ko, ipapa-homework ko na lang sa kanila because I might be missing something. Baka madali lang yan, meron lang na-overlook. Alright? Hindi ko talaga siya maisip kaninang umaga. Pero naisip-isip ko rin, katatapos nyo lang mag-problem set. So baka you want to take a break from Math 155 requirements. So is it okay if we not have a homework for next week? Pero clickbait naman yung tanong, no? Alam ko naman ang isasagot nyo, Or ayaw nyo, hinahanap nyo yung homework. Or hanapin ng sistema nyo yung homework sa 155. May talaga walang reacts? Or mabagal ang internet ko na naman? Walang nakikitang reactions. Okay. May soft paper naman. Yeah, you're right, Rezi. Yeah. Okay, wala na muna tayong homework on next week, all right? So, premyo yun, maliit na premyo nyo na yon para sa pagdurusa nyo sa problem set number 1. Oh, by the way, I'm trying to finish grading. Lahat ng mga regular submissions, yung mga submissions via Canvas, tapos ko nang checkan yung problem set 1.1. I'll try to continue and check the other remaining problems. Pero yung mga early birds, yung mga nakapagpasa ng lahat ng problem set items before the deadline yesterday, probably yesterday afternoon, I think I graded all of your work. So kindly take a look at my comments there. Tapos yun, hopefully, I cannot promise to grade later tonight. Medyo magliliwaliw muna ako after our class. Tapos, I need to write a proposal due tomorrow. Kasi alam niyo naman, deadline, buzzer beaters. So, meron akong kailangan tapusin. And then tomorrow, I'm gonna write a problem set for Math 175. So, medyo baka wala akong time. So I'll try to finish it over the weekend naman. So probably by Monday or Tuesday, I should be able to finish reading everything. Okay, so I hope it's not too much of a delay. What else? Sige. Sige, 2-minute break muna tayo. Though nagsimula na ako mag-break. Oh, yung SAF paper, pinapadala nga ni Rezi. Deadline ay Monday, right before midnight. Since this is just a bonus requirement, I am not extending deadlines for this kind of stuff, right? So, pasa nyo siya. Sayang, it's a +1 sa problem set. So, ibig sabihin kung +1 sa problem set, 40 items yung problem set. So that means pag nagpasa kayo, that's automatic plus 2.5%. So ang 2.5% ang homework natin, ang problem set 1 ay 20% ng final grade. So that means the paper will contribute 0.5 point to your final grade. So medyo significant na siya. So 0.5 siya sa final grade. So don't miss it out. So write the paper. Anong content niya? Wala naman, reflection nyo lang or your reaction to the event. Yun yung sa SAF, alright? I think we had a very good set of speakers, though hindi na ako naka-attend dun sa hapon. Pero yung first speaker talk about data science and some of you wrote, I don't know if it's parang sa 1.1, that at this point you are still thinking na kung saan talaga kayo mapupunta, which is a common quandary. Isa siyang common question sa mga math and applied math majors, especially for math majors na, okay, BS math ako, ang parang prevailing thought ay sa academe ka lang pwede, magpa-prof ka or magiging teacher ka sa high school, alright? Yun lang yung pwede mong maging trabaho. And siguro it's applied math, saan ba ako papasok? Wala tayong titulo katulad ng mga MD na doctor or engineers na fixed yung pupuntahan. That's a common question. Pero, you know what? In the previous years, it seems that the industry is really appreciating math majors. Kasi kahit yung diploma natin ay BS Math or BS Applied Math, I know some of my former students or some of my classmates are employed as data scientists, data analysts, software engineers, nasa banking and finance. Of course, yung mga AS nasa actuarial companies sila. Pero yun nga, yun yung nakakatuwa na hindi natin kailangan ng specific training because the industry now is more problem-oriented and they already appreciate na yung mga math and applied math majors, they do have the capacity to think critically to answer a particular problem. Actually, hindi lang critically. We can oftentimes think creatively and outside of the box. Kasi parang proving. Walang specific template ang proving eh. So, kailangan mo mag-invento, think outside of the box, and so on. So, parang yon. So, don't feel lost, all right? Okay lang yan. Makakahanap din kayo ng opportunities later. And I think it's a nice, the job fair, double check nyo yung schedule sa aming mga Facebook pages. Will give you an idea ano yung mga companies na naghahanap ng math and applied math majors. Right? Malay nyo, pag graduate nyo, sa kanila kayo mapunta or kahit sa internship. Alright? Which reminds me, kailangan ko palang i-email yung mga prospective magpa-practicum for this mid-year na math and applied math. I'll do that probably next week. Alright? So yun, magandang segue no, pang-advertise. But we still have another event on the 28th on Monday. We have the research webinars. So and then I think it's a good opportunity for you, especially if you're still looking for special topic for your special problem. So makita nyo yung promotion ng mga research clusters. So bobolahin namin kayo doon. Ano yung makukuha nyo pag sumali kayo sa aming cluster. Alright? So it's a nice thing to attend. And then meron ding bonus doon. Ang bonus doon ay kailangan nyo mag-react sa dalawang research clusters. Alright? Siguraduhin nyo na dalawa yung re-reactan nyo or at least dalawa. And that's another 1 point bonus to the problem set. So that's another 0.5 each final grade. So problem set pa lang na bonuses, meron na kayong +1 sa final grade. So I hope you take advantage of these. Walang extension yung deadline sa kanila. So as soon as soon as you have the time, sit down for say 15 or 30 minutes or an hour. Gawin nyo na siya, tapos pasan nyo na siya kagad, right? Hindi ko kayo mabibigyan ng isang full week to submit the reflection paper for the research webinar on Monday. Kasi ang Monday week after next would be the reading break na. So I'll put the deadline of the reaction paper for the March 28 event on April 1 right before midnight. Bago tayo mag-reading break. Okay. Tanong ni Charles, kailan magiging speaker sa SAF? Disqualified yata ako. Hindi ako qualified mag-SAF. So, yeah. Unless siguro mag-resign ako sa teaching. Tapos, i-invite nila ako as an alumni. So, anyway, so yun yung commercial natin. Parang hindi rin ako sa commercial, no? Okay. Now, I would just like to close the meeting. Hopefully in 12, 17 minutes, I can do this. Let's talk about Theorem 2.6. Now, actually, wag pala muna ng Theorem 2.6. Kailangan ko muna yung definition 2.5. Now, what is definition 2.5 about? It's talking about subsequences. So ano ba ang isang subsequence? Of course, mag-start tayo sa isang sequence. Then, a sequence is a subsequence of another sequence, all right? If ganito. Nandyan yung definition, pwede nyo siyang basahin later, pero ganito yung ibig sabihin niya lang. Kasi pag inumpisa natin ng technical, matatakot na tayo dun sa dami ng mga sinabi natin. So mag-start ako sa sequence AN. Tapos sabihin ko, itong sequence na to ay A1, A2, A3, hanggang sa dulo. A4, ... Okay? Tapos, bubuo ako ng subsequence. Sa isang sequence, pwede kang makabuo ng napakaraming subsequences. Pero there's only one requirement. The only requirement is that all terms in the subsequence should come from the parent sequence, and the ordering must be preserved. The ordering must be preserved in what way? Dapat ganito. Pwede mong piliin, okay, siguro, sige, sali ko si A1. Si A2, no, I don't want A2 to be in the new sequence. Probably I'll pick A3. Okay ko siya dyan. Tapos si A4, no. A5, ayoko rin. A6, sige, si A6, sama ko. Pero hindi ako pwedeng mag-ibang isip at isali bigla si A4. Hindi pwede si A4 kasi nalampasan na siya. Na-reject na siya, there's no second chance. All right? Walang second chance sa subsequences. So meaning, the subscripts should continually increase. Right? Nag-harvest ako ng mga elements mula dun sa mga terms mula dun sa sequence in the increasing order of subscript or index. So pwede ako rito magkaroon ng A sub 1,000, the 1,000 term in my original sequence, but I cannot include any term that is prior to A sub 1,000. So mga susunod na dito, mga numbers na ang subscript ay mas malaki na sa A sub 1,000. Okay? And then usually, to emphasize the relation between the two sequences, so kung etong sequence na to, yung parent sequence, pwede ko yung tawaging A sub n. Ang itatawag ko dun sa subsequence ay A sub n sub k. Dalawa na yung sub. Kaya, dalawa na yung subscript. So, kaya maisip mo, ito yung sub ng sequence. Kasi doble na yung subscript niya. Okay? N sub k. Well, in what notation? Anong ibig sabihin ng A sub n? Well, in this particular case, yung A sub 1, okay, the first term in the subsequence will be called A sub n sub 1. So, ibig sabihin si A sub n sub 1, siya yung unang term dun sa subsequence. Si A sub n sub 2, siya yung pangalawang term doon sa subsequence. And so on. Alright? Tapos, kung mapapansin nyo, itong subscript na to, yung pinaka-numeral na subscript doon sa subsequence, lagi yan dapat mas maliit kesa kay k. So that means n sub k must be greater than or equal to k for all k. Bakit? Kasi yung n sub 1, ibig sabihin siya yung first index. So ang a sub 1 natin dito ay equal kay 1. Tapos ang n sub 2 natin ay equal kay 3. Meaning the second subscript in the subsequence is equal to 3. And then 6 is n sub 3 because 6 is the third index in the subsequence. And so that means if I'm looking at n sub 3, n sub 3 cannot be equal to 1. Kasi si 1, hindi siya pwedeng maging pangatlong index dun sa subsequence. Kasi ibig sabihin, may nauna na sa kanyang dalawa, hindi nga pwede. Dapat ma-preserve yung order ng subsequence. Okay? So si si N4, hindi siya pwedeng mas maliit kay 4. Alright? Dapat si N sub 4 mas malaki kay 4. Kasi kung mas maliit siya kay 4, ibig sabihin, merong mga terms ng sequence na nauna sa kanya. Alright? And this will play a role in the proof that we will write later. Okay? Na mukhang di ko na aabutin. Alright? So does this make sense? Kasi maraming misnomer pag sinabing subsequence. Hindi lang siya subset, kumbaga, na dapat na preserve yung order ng sequence. Okay? Now, some examples, some concrete examples. Una, mga madaling subsequence, kolektahin mo lang yung may mga odd na subscripts. Maintain the increasing order of the subscripts. Then this is a subsequence of a sub n. On the other hand, if you collect all the even index terms, tapos increasing order pa rin yung index, then that would be a subsequence of a sub n. Okay? Some more tangible examples. Tingnan natin yung alternating sequence natin kanina. -1 to the power n. Or actually, nung isang araw pa, right? Pag kinuha mo lahat ng mga pag kinuha mo yung odd subsequence, lahat lang na may subscript na odd, tapos increasing yung subscript, ang makukuha natin ay subsequence na puro -1 yung laman. Pag kinuha mo yung a sub 2k, ibig sabihin kukunin mo lang lahat ng may even na subscript, tapos increasing yung order ng subscripts, makukuha naman natin ay sequence na puro ones. All right. Now, we have a sequence, and we know that the original sequence is divergent. This will not accumulate to a particular real number in the long run. Na-prove na natin yun before. However, here, we have found two subsequences of this sequence that converges. Yun nga lang, magkaiba kung saan nagko-converge yung dalawang subsequences. Yung unang subsequence nagko-converge kay -1, yung pangalawang sequence nagko-converge kay 1. Okay? And we will investigate this phenomenon later in a subsequent theorem. Okay? Pero before that, isa pang example, yung sequence naman ng mga 1 over n's. So pag kinuha mo lahat ng even, okay siya. And it is a subsequence because a sub 2 is the second term in the original sequence. A sub 4 is the fourth term in the original sequence. 1 over 6 is the sixth term, and so on. So hindi nababago yung order. So walang nakakasingit sa pila. Parang may mga nawawala dun sa original sequence, pero yung remaining elements nakapila pa rin sila in the same order. Pwede mo rin naman piliin 1, 1/10, 1 over 100, 1 over 1,000. Because this is still a subsequence because this is the first term in the original sequence. This is the 10th term in the original sequence. This is the 100th term in the original sequence, and so on. So we are not altering the ordering of the remaining elements na napili natin to belong to the subsequence. Okay? Now, this is a non-example, the third one. This is not an example because you see that we elected a sub 10, which is the 10th term in the original sequence to be the first term, and yet we chose 1/5 to supposedly be the second term in the subsequence, but that will violate the definition ng subsequence kasi nga si 1/5 siya yung panglima sa pila originally, naunahan pa siya ni 1/10. Ni 1/10 na pang-10 pa dun sa original na pila. So hindi ito isang subsequence kasi hindi niya na-preserve yung order. Alright? Now, I don't want to start Theorem 2.6 na. Yeah, I think it's we can stop here. Mahuli lang tayo ng isang theorem dun sa kabilang section, but that's fine. Let's not overwork ourselves, right? So baka info overload na rin. I don't know. Parang ang unti nang na-discuss natin per particular day. Pero if that's already too much information for you, then I would gladly stop. Pero kung nababagalan kayo, I can pick up the pace. So what do you think? Masyado bang mabagal or okay lang? May tendency kasi ako na pag hindi ko sure na na-deliver ko yung message ng tao or it is received by my students, ang tendency ko ay bagalan, paulit-ulitin yung mga sinasabi ko and so on. Problema ngayon sa online setup na naka-off cam tayo. Kasi sa face-to-face, kaya kong hulaan mula sa inyong mga face expressions. Pero kapag ka ganitong online, akong kaklu-clue kung din on. Right? So if you find it too slow, yeah, I can do this this way kung okay sa inyo, but I can also pick up the pace. Kung nanonood kayo ng recording tas medyo mabagal ako magsalita, i-times 1.5 or i-times 2 nyo na lang yung speed and so on. Right? But let's stop here. Any questions, clarifications? Ang lakas ko magsabing let's stop here, pero sakto lang pala, no? 3:50 na, so kailangan ko na talaga kayong i-dismiss. All right, any questions, clarifications? So mukhang ready na kayong mag-weekend, right? I'm also excited for the weekend, hindi lamang para magpahinga, because a new chapter of One Piece is coming up. So kung nagmamanga rin kayo, unfortunately, nabasa ko yung mga spoilers, so this seems to be a groundbreaking chapter. So yeah, the entire fandom will be alive the entire weekend when the official copy or the official manga will be released. But anyway, that's the thing that I'll be busy with this weekend. So I hope you guys can also find time to attend to your hobbies or to your interests. May raw scans. Naka-record kasi ako, Rezi, kaya ayokong sabihin I patronize raw scans. But of course, if we can get it 2 days earlier than the official release, then that's fine. So yun. Okay, so yeah, find time to relax. I know that might be hard for you, especially you are doing a lot of ACAD works, and of course you're with your family, so maraming kailangan gawin pag nasa bahay, right? Maraming obligasyon kailangan. Pero I hope you can still find some time to relax and give yourself a recharge, all right? Para sa susunod na linggo. Konti na lang guys, kapit lang, malapit na yung 2 weeks nating bakasyon, all right? And then let's see if we will still meet on tama pala, no? Tuesday. Holy Tuesday. Let me think about Holy Tuesday. Alright? Tingnan natin kung mag-meet pa tayo ng Holy Tuesday para masolo nyo na talaga yung Holy Week. Alright? So let me just think about it and I'll plot the schedule and see if I can afford to give you that as an additional holiday. Alright? Para makapag-book na kayo. Hanggang ano pala, 27, merong voucher sale ang Cebu Pacific. 99 peso base fare. You can redeem it hanggang April 2023 yata. Yun yung pinagkapuyatan ko kagabi. Panic ako pagbo-book. Hindi ko nakukuha yung confirmation number. Yun pala ay late nila na send yung email. Tapos hindi ko ni-screenshot kasi. So Gusto ko nang tawagan sila kagabi. Pero kanina umaga nakuha ko na yung confirmation email. So if you're planning ahead and want to get some time, so baka makatipid tayo dun sa seat sale na yun, alright? Okay, so I think that's too much info na. So okay, so enjoy the weekend. Keep safe, guys, and let's see each other again on Tuesday. Bye, everyone.